Now we are starting off with one of today's celebrations, the International Accountant Day, which is celebrated on the 10th of every November every year and is an opportunity to acknowledge the great work accountants do to make businesses thrive, support the economy and also help people navigate the complexities of finance. Now, since its inception in 1972, this annual event is celebrated globally to give recognition to accountants who are saddled with highly demanding jobs and as recognition of their roles in enhancing public trust through high-quality financing reporting and as key players in the country's growth and economic development agenda. Notwithstanding the institution in which they operate, accounting professionals are most times regarded as those in front line of the battle against fraud, corruption and corporate governance issues through the evolving role data analytics plays through accurate auditing processes. Now, to discuss this and more, I have the president of the Association of National Accountants of Nigeria, ANAN, Professor Benjamin Chuka Osisioma. Good to have you on the show this afternoon.
Thank you very much.
Now, let's start off with the ever-evolving phase of data management and analysis and the evolution of the role of accountants, be it in private or public spaces. How would you say we are meeting up with the trends of evolution when it comes to data analysis and management and meeting the needs of the time today?
Well, thank you very much. Let me begin by saying that it is indeed a thing of joy and some pride that the world is celebrating the accountant today. The accountant has his hand on the pulse of the economy of a nation, monitoring the inflows and outflows, the addition of values, the creation of values, and ascertaining at the end of a period, are we better today than we were last year, and where are we hoping to be next year. So if you look at the role of the accountant, we have a fairly total picture. You can't talk about a business without talking about accounting. That's why we often say that accounting is a language of business. That's the way business communicates. Essentially, accounting does two things. We measure financial values and we communicate financial values. This measurement and communication they are both a precursor to the interpretation of data for purposes of decision making. So these are the things that make for the accounting as a discipline. And you find it very critical and crucial in public sector establishments, in private sector establishments. How do nations go forward? They sit down and they plan. That's what the accountant helps to do. We plan, we control, we set up the indices of for planning, we set up the indices of control, we monitor performance, we detect variances, deviations from plans, and we help to ensure that the plans are realized. We set up control systems that will minimize waste and inefficiencies, that will curb weaknesses in the system and enable each system to attain the purpose for which it has been set up. That's what the accountant does. The accountant is also an auditor. In other words, he monitors the expenditure, the outflow of funds, to ensure that money has been spent for that which it has been approved. How do I put it? Ensuring that every naira of expenditure goes the highest possible mileage. That's the role of the accountant.
Now, Prof,
of course, with that, you could say that the accountant will be in the center of.
Yes, exactly. The accountant is at the center of business today. Now, talking about business today and steering the economic agenda of Nigeria now to full fruition, let's look at budgetary elements here now, the role of accountants. Take a look at previous budgets we've had so far, looking at implementation, assessing impact, and also making necessary communication for improvement. Now, we have the 2022 budget of economic growth and sustainability presented as well, and it's under scrutiny. To what extent do you think the role of accountants would help bring the necessary changes and analysis to this proposal to ensure that we have a much more effective budget to meet our economic agenda?
Well, I had actually begun to talk about that. The accountant is critical to the budget process, sets up the parameters, ensures that we map out where we are going. Is a planning process. Plan, control, ensure the operation of the plans, and achieve the targets that government has set out to achieve. And for example, now look at the current national budget, 16 point whatever trillion naira. We have graduated from millions to billions, now to trillions. Where else? Lots of money. Where are they going to? Going into defense, going into education, going into infrastructure, going into trade and commerce. The accountant maps out. It's like a geography master, determining where we want to get to when we are at this point. How do we get there? How do we move to where we want to get to? That's what we do in the process of budgeting. And when we finish setting out the budget, monitor its operation. Monitor to ensure that the aim, the purpose, the objective of that plan has been attained. That's why that's one of the problems we have in budgeting in these climes. We are good at setting out budgets. We are not good at analyzing whether we have achieved what we set out to achieve. But that's again the role of the accountant. When we give the accountant a central place in all these processes, he will be critical to make sure that we benefit most. Cost-benefit analysis is at the core of whatever the accountant does. He does not believe in waste of resources for nothing. And so let the millions, let the trillions, let the billions be spent to achieve the purpose for which government desires. Let me touch a little aspect. In this current, but there's something government said, that the critical issue is not the debt overhang, but rather the ability to generate revenue. And here again, the accountant comes in. What are we doing to generate the revenue to drive the economy? The budget has a theme, economy of growth, economic growth and sustainability. And I want to know, what are the factors that will drive the growth? The accountant is interested in putting these things in place and helping to ensure that the fundamentals of the economy rise from one level to another. So there's no way. It is at the core of it all, whether it is public sector or private sector.
Prof, now, if I may butt in here as well, let's look at issues around corporate governance and corruption. These are certain challenges we're yet to make milestones in with regards to budget performance. Now, in terms of developing a robust performance index, to what extent do you see things tilting for a better narrative, especially within the lines of corruption and corporate governance?
Well, that's the bane of development in our economy, and it's not peculiar to us. Corruption, men in public places, men who are well privileged and well positioned, exploiting their position to enrich themselves at the expense of the nation. Every civil servant, every public servant, every man who works is entitled to a fair wage. The good book says do not, a fair wage should follow a good day's job. It's normal. But when we go beyond what is already entitled to come to us, that's where you begin to obfuscate, if you like, mess up the plans laid out by the budget. There are places certain funds should go to. Are they going there? And the problem is that the public officer does not see that some of the things we do end up bringing a lot of bloodshed in the nation. Let me give you an example. You're a minister of works, or you're in charge of the roads, and some billions of naira have been voted for the roads, you corner them for other purposes, and then there are accidents on the road and people die. I believe that God will ask individuals questions about such deaths, because the blood is on our hands. So where does the accountant come in? It is the duty of the accountant to report things as they are. The primary purpose of an accountant is to report things as they are. Report where these funds go to. If they have been diverted, show that they've been diverted. Luckily for us, we have been developing all kinds of specialties. We now have auditing, we now have forensic accounting and audit, we now have all kinds of fraud examination to enable us to trace ill-gotten wealth. What the executive arm does with it is a different matter altogether. But our professional duty is to follow the money, follow the trail, detect where it goes, and ensure that monies voted for A are spent for A and not diverted to B. I think that's all you can say to that.
And would you say we've made any record successes in terms of following the money in the last, say, 5 years or a decade?
I'm not getting you very clearly.
Would you say we've made any record successes in terms of following the money, say, in the last 5 years to 10 years?
I like that pose. Have we made much success? If I were to score us as a society, as an economy, I doubt whether I will give a pass mark. And I don't know. I will blame the accountant, and yet I will not blame the accountant. Let me tell you why I will not blame the accountant. The accountant is the professional on the spot. But you see, the action comes mainly from the executive arm. And ask any accountant, ask any auditor, they will tell you. He does his job, he exists at the mercy of the executive who holds the power. And the truth of the matter is that most of these things are done with the connivance of the accountant. But much of the executive action comes from the executive. So if I were to assess whether the money has gone to where it ought to go in the past 5 years, I would say no. If it has, why are roads in this state? Why is it that every budget we talk about the east-west road in south-south, east-west road that has got how many billions and trillions, yet is still impassable? Where I come from, Enugu-Onitsha road is impassable. When the rains fall, it's like a trip to Golgotha. Oh, so the funds are not going to where they ought to go. What of the schools? Are they taken care of? What of the health centers? Why do we still go abroad to get our basic ailments treated if the funds are going to where they ought to go? Yet every year we set out funds to renovate, refresh, rehabilitate, and reinvigorate these arms of the government. The truth is that they don't go to where they are supposed to go.
So if we have these lapses as it now, where do you now see the future of accounting and accountant practice in Nigeria taking a footing? How do you see things taking shape if what is appearing on paper is totally different from what we have in reality? How do you see things taking shape, the role of the accountant in today's business?
Well, we will never give up. We are always committed to driving for efficiency. My professional body, Association of National Accountants of Nigeria, ANAN, we train our members. We drum this issue of professional ethics into their ears. We emphasize on the importance of integrity as a critical factor in our performance as professional accountants. I always say that there are three things that mark out professionals. The first one is their competence, the knowledge and skills. The second one is the discipline. I call it the price tag that comes with professionalism. And there's the third part, integrity. It is the ultimate test. Sadly, many professionals live out their entire lives and die without ever attaining this peak, this height of professionalism. The professional must stand his ground. Definitely will pay a price for it. At times it may lead to losing your job or losing your promotion or losing certain perquisites of office that we're entitled to. But if we are to reverse and have some hope for our children and our children's children, it's a sad day when I look at the state of affairs we are bringing up the next generation into. That's what they're inheriting. I spoke a number of weeks ago and I said, my generation seems to have failed this generation. The economy we received, the nation we received, the standards we received, compare them with what we are passing on to the next generation. And all of us in this, we should really rue and wonder where we went wrong. So I think that if we apply ourselves to the challenge and the times, and like in my professional body, we take no chances. Once we receive a complaint, recently we got a complaint from a state government about certain things about people who claim to be part of us and yet not part of us. We took very strict measures to make sure that we check back and go out of our way to arrest any slide in values and norms and actions, so to bring things back to normal. So we will continue to do our best. I'm not a prophet, I'm not a seer, but I pray that we will somehow reverse the inglorious trend that has become our lot in these days.
Thank you very much for your time on the show today, Professor Benjamin Chuka Osisioma, and then we hope to see that accounting practice takes a footing in the Nigerian economy. Today, doing business has to be much more transparent. We have to see results, and the role of accountants remain integral in all of these. Thank you very much once again for your time. Well, now we're looking at the part 2 of our interview segment on the show today, as we are focusing on the port congestion we are having within the port corridor and looking at the overall performance we've seen in the port sector. Now, looking at taking the maritime sector having a footing, one of the biggest challenges we've had so far is port congestion, which remains a serious scenario associated with delays, queuing, and extra time of voyage and dwell time of ships and cargo at the port, which have always been an unpleasant consequence on logistics and supply chain. Joining me now to discuss this and much more, I have Lucky Amiwere, International Maritime Consultant. Thank you very much for joining us on the show today. Lucky Amiwere, can you hear me? Now, Lucky, if you can hear me, let's start off now with the overall performance of the NPA's function post-port concession and assessing whether or not the concessionaires have developed the port in line with stated agreements. We are wrapping up the year 2021. What do you think are the lapses and challenges we have to defeat as we are wrapping up the year 2021 and going into 2022 within our port corridor? Well, we are still trying to establish connection there with Lucky Amiwere, but we'll just take a quick break, and then when we come back, the conversation continues. Don't go anywhere.